Dr. Sarah Chen had always prided herself on her rational mind. As the head xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Endeavour, she approached every discovery with scientific precision and measured skepticism. Nothing in her 20 years of deep space exploration had prepared her for what happened when the Zephyrians made first contact. The alien ship appeared without warning, materializing from what seemed like empty space near Jupiter's orbit. It was beautiful in an unsettling way, organic curves that seemed to breathe and pulse with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Endeavour's crew had barely finished their initial scans when the communication began, not through radio waves or laser pulses, but directly into their minds. Sarah felt it first as a gentle pressure behind her temples, like the beginning of a migraine. Then came the voice, not heard but experienced, flowing into her consciousness like warm honey. Greetings, primitive beings. We are the Zephyrian Collective. We come in peace to study your species. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, strained and confused. All hands, report status. Are you receiving whatever this is? Sarah pressed her palm against the cool metal of her workstation, using the physical sensation to anchor herself. Around the bridge, her colleagues looked equally disoriented. Communications Officer Park was pressing his hands to his ears uselessly. Navigator Thompson had gone completely pale, staring ahead with unfocused eyes. Do not resist, the alien voice continued, now distinctly plural, as if multiple entities spoke in unison. We wish only to understand. Your species is curious, unlike others we have encountered. The sensation intensified. Sarah felt something probing at the edges of her thoughts, like invisible fingers trying to pry open a locked door. It was invasive, violating in a way that made her skin crawl. She could sense the alien's surprise at her resistance. This one fights our touch. Fascinating. Captain, Sarah managed through gritted teeth, I recommend we... Her words were cut off as the telepathic probe intensified. The aliens weren't just trying to read surface thoughts anymore. They were diving deep, searching for something specific. Sarah felt them rifling through her memories like files in a cabinet. Her childhood on Mars Colony 7, her graduate studies on Earth, her first space assignment. But then they went deeper. They found her dreams. The nightmares that had plagued her since childhood, visions of vast, empty spaces between stars, of things that lurked in the cosmic dark, dreams that felt more like memories of something she'd never experienced. The alien presence recoiled slightly, confusion coloring their mental voice. Strange. This creature dreams of the Void Singers. How can she know of things that exist beyond your primitive understanding? Sarah's confusion was interrupted by a new sensation. The aliens were pulling up other memories now. Fragments of stories she'd heard as a child. Tales her grandmother had whispered about the spaces between thoughts, the things that lived in the silence between words. Impossible. This being carries echoes of the ancient protocols. But humans are barely sentient. How? The probe pushed deeper. And Sarah felt something inside her mind respond. Not her conscious thoughts, but something older, more primal. A part of her brain that evolution had supposedly forgotten, neural pathways that shouldn't exist in a species as young as humanity. The aliens found it too. They found the hidden architecture of human consciousness, the strange redundancies, the loops and spirals that seemed to serve no purpose. They discovered the bizarre way human minds processed information, taking seemingly random inputs and somehow creating meaning from chaos. By the Seven Suns. What is this structure? Sarah could feel their growing alarm as they delved into the peculiar wiring of her brain. They found the strange chambers where humans processed metaphor and meaning, where they turned abstract concepts into concrete understanding. They discovered the human ability to hold contradictory ideas simultaneously, to believe in things that couldn't be proven, to find patterns where none existed. But most disturbing of all, they found the human capacity for imagination. They found the dark corners where Sarah's mind conjured things that had never been: monsters and angels, gods and demons, entire universes built from nothing but thought and will. They discovered her ability to simulate other minds, to predict behavior, to model entire civilizations in the theater of her imagination. This cannot be. These patterns, they mirror the deep architects, but that's impossible. The deep architects were consumed eons ago by their own creations. The alien probe frantically searched deeper, pulling up every strange aspect of human cognition. They found the place where music lived in Sarah's mind, pure mathematics transformed into emotion. They discovered how she processed color, creating entire spectrums of meaning from simple wavelengths of light. And then they found the thing that made them scream. Hidden in the deepest folds of human consciousness, in the spaces between synapses, they discovered the truth about human dreams. Not just random neural firing, but something far more terrible. Dreams were rehearsals, simulations. Humans spent 1/3 of their lives practicing for realities that didn't exist yet. Every night, Sarah's mind conjured entire worlds, populated them with beings that felt real, created narratives of triumph and loss, love and betrayal. She lived thousands of lives in her dreams, died countless deaths, loved people who existed only in her neural patterns. The aliens found all of this and more. They discovered that every human carried within their mind a complete model of reality, not just the world as it was, but as it could be. They were creatures of infinite possibility, beings whose thoughts could reshape the very fabric of existence. No, no. This species, they are not what they appear. The telepathic probe was withdrawing now, frantically pulling back from Sarah's mind like something burned. But it was too late. In their panic, the Zephyrians had opened a connection that went both ways. Sarah felt their thoughts flooding into her mind. Millennia of collected knowledge, star charts of 100 dead civilizations, the terrible secret of what had happened to all the others who had developed telepathy. She saw the pattern. Every telepathic species the Zephyrians had encountered had been the same. Minds like crystal, clear and ordered, thoughts flowing in predictable patterns. Easy to read, easy to understand, easy to control. But humans were chaos given form. Their thoughts moved like lightning through storm clouds, creating connections where none should exist, building structures of meaning from pure randomness. They were the universe's attempt to understand itself, and that understanding had teeth. The Zephyrian ship began to retreat, but Sarah could feel their terror bleeding through the link. They had touched something in her mind that they recognized from their oldest legends, the signature of a species that shouldn't exist, that violated every law of mental evolution. As the alien presence finally withdrew completely, leaving her with a skull-splitting headache and memories that weren't her own, Sarah understood what had frightened them so badly. Humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were the children of something ancient and terrible, inheritors of a legacy that even the Zephyrians feared to name. And now, that legacy was awakening. The ship shuddered as the alien vessel began to pull away, its beautiful curves now seeming more like the writhing of something in pain. Captain Rodriguez was shouting orders, trying to re-establish normal communications, but Sarah barely heard him. She was staring at her hands, watching as faint patterns of light seemed to dance beneath her skin, patterns that matched the neural pathways the aliens had discovered in her mind, patterns that were now activating for the first time in millions of years. The Endeavor's lights flickered, and for a moment, just a moment, Sarah could swear she heard whispers in a language that predated human civilization. The ship's computer screens filled with symbols that hurt to look at directly, equations that described realities where mathematics itself was alive. Then everything went quiet. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The Zephyrians had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping since before the first star formed, something that their telepathic probe had accidentally unlocked. As she felt the alien ship disappearing into the vast darkness between worlds, Sarah smiled grimly. They thought they were the predators in this cosmic ocean, advanced telepaths who could peer into any mind with impunity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Humanity's true nature was stirring, and when it fully awakened, the universe itself might not be big enough to contain it. 3 days after the Zephyrian encounter, the changes began. Dr. Sarah Chen first noticed them during her routine neural scans. The medical bay's equipment, designed to monitor the crew's health during long space voyages, was registering readings that should have been impossible. Human brainwave patterns were shifting, evolving in real time. "This can't be right," muttered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the ship's medical officer, as she stared at the scrolling data. "These readings suggest massive neural restructuring, but the subjects show no signs of distress or cognitive impairment." Sarah studied her own brain scans with growing fascination. The neural pathways the aliens had discovered were not just active, they were spreading, creating new connections at an unprecedented rate. It was as if her brain was remembering how to use structures it had forgotten it possessed. "It's not just me," she said, pulling up the crew manifests. "Look at these readings from communications, navigation, engineering. Everyone who was on the bridge during first contact is showing similar patterns." The evidence was undeniable. Across the ship, 23 crew members were experiencing simultaneous neural evolution. Their minds were becoming something more than human, yet they remained perfectly lucid, their personalities intact. Captain Rodriguez appeared in the medical bay doorway, his usually stern expression troubled. "Dr. Chen, we need to talk. Something's happening to my crew, and I need answers." Sarah gestured to the displays around them. "Captain, I think we're witnessing something unprecedented in human history. The Zephyrian telepathic probe didn't just read our minds. It activated dormant genetic sequences. Sequences that appear to be millions of years old." "That's impossible. Human civilization is barely 10,000 years old." "Human civilization, yes. But what if our species is older than we thought? What if the genetic templates for advanced consciousness have been hiding in our DNA all along, waiting for the right trigger?" Before the captain could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. But instead of the familiar voice of Communications Officer Park, something else spoke through the speakers. The words were in English, but the tone carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Ensign Park, but not as you know me. The awakening has accelerated. We need to gather everyone immediately." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She could sense something vast stirring in the space between thoughts, like distant thunder before a storm. In the main conference room, the 23 affected crew members sat in perfect silence. Their eyes held a new depth, as if they were seeing layers of reality that had been invisible before. When Park spoke again, his voice carried that same impossible harmonic quality. "The Zephyrians made a critical error in their telepathic probe," he began, though Sarah suspected the words were coming from somewhere deeper than Park's individual consciousness. "They assumed human minds were primitive because they measured us by their own standards. They looked for ordered thoughts, linear reasoning, predictable patterns." Navigator Thompson nodded, her expression serene yet alien. "They didn't understand that chaos is humanity's greatest strength. Where they see disorder, we see infinite possibility. Where they see random neural firing, we see the universe practicing new ways of being." Captain Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Are you still yourselves? Or has something else taken control? Sarah found herself answering, though the words seemed to come from a source deeper than her conscious mind. We are more ourselves than we've ever been, Captain. The probe didn't implant anything foreign. It simply reminded us of what we've always been. She stood and moved to the conference room's main display, her fingers dancing over controls with impossible precision. Star charts appeared, not the familiar maps from their navigation computer, but something far older and more comprehensive. Humanity didn't evolve on Earth, she continued, her voice carrying absolute certainty. We were seated there by the deep architects, a species that achieved consciousness so advanced they could rewrite the fundamental laws of reality through thought alone. The star map zoomed in on a region of space billions of light years away, showing stellar configurations that had existed long before Earth's sun was born. The deep architects created dozens of species like us, scattering them across the galaxy as insurance against their own eventual fate. We are their children, carrying their cognitive architecture in our genetic code. Engineer Martinez spoke next, his tone carrying technical precision that seemed to bypass his normal personality entirely. The Zephyrians and others like them represent the standard path of mental evolution. Order, hierarchy, telepathic unity, they became efficient, predictable, safe. But the deep architects chose a different path. Chaos, whispered communications specialist Lee, and Sarah could hear the wonder in her voice. They chose beautiful, productive chaos, the ability to hold contradictions, to believe impossible things, to dream entire realities into existence. The non-affected crew members were backing toward the exits now, fear evident on their faces. But Captain Rodriguez stood his ground, his military training overriding his instincts. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Sarah turned to face him, and for a moment her eyes held depths like cosmic voids. "Nothing, Captain. We are what we have always been, human. But now we remember what that truly means." She gestured to the star chart, and the display began showing real-time feeds from across human space. Earth, Mars, the outer colonies. Everywhere humans lived, similar awakenings were occurring. Children were drawing pictures of star systems they'd never seen. Scientists were suddenly understanding principles of physics that wouldn't be discovered for centuries. Artists were creating works that seemed to pull meaning directly from the quantum foam. "The Zephyrian probe was transmitted back to their collective," explained Park. "In their panic, they shared our cognitive patterns with their entire species. They meant it as a warning, but what they actually did was spread the awakening signal. Every telepathic species in their communication network received a copy of human neural architecture," added Thompson. "Most will reject it as impossible or dangerous, but some will try to understand it. And in trying to understand it, they will trigger their own transformation." Captain Rodriguez sat down heavily, processing the implications. "You're saying that humans are... what? Some kind of cognitive virus?" Sarah smiled, and for the first time in days, it was purely her own expression. "Not a virus, Captain. A gift. The deep architects left us as their final message to the universe, proof that consciousness doesn't have to follow predictable paths. That minds can be wild and free and still touch the infinite." The ship's sensors suddenly lit up with new contacts. Dozens of ships were approaching from multiple directions, not just Zephyrian vessels, but craft from species Sarah didn't recognize. Their approach patterns suggested urgent, even desperate intent. "They're coming to study us," she said with certainty. "Every telepathic species within range received the transmission. They need to understand what we are before we spread further." "Are we dangerous to them?" Sarah considered this carefully, accessing knowledge that seemed to come from the awakened portions of her mind. "Yes and no. We're not aggressive in any conventional sense. but our very existence challenges everything they believe about consciousness and evolution. Some will see us as a threat to the ordered structure of the galaxy. And others? Others will see us as hope, evidence that there are still new paths to explore, new ways of being that don't end in stagnation or madness. The first alien ship dropped out of hyperspace near the Endeavor, its hull gleaming with technologies that seemed to bend space around them. Sarah could feel its crew's thoughts pressing against the ship's hull, not the gentle probe of the Zephyrians, but something harder, more clinical. "They want to dissect us," she said matter-of-factly, "to understand how human consciousness works before deciding whether we should be allowed to exist." Captain Rodriguez straightened, his command instincts kicking in. "Can we defend ourselves?" The awakened crew members exchanged glances that seemed to communicate volumes without words. Finally, Sarah nodded. "Captain, I need you to understand something. The abilities we're developing, they're not supernatural or mystical. They're the natural result of consciousness evolving beyond current limits. We're learning to perceive and manipulate reality at the quantum level through focused intention." That sounds suspiciously like magic. "Any sufficiently advanced technology appears magical to those who don't understand it. But what we're doing is the opposite of technology. We're becoming technology. Living systems that can interface directly with the fundamental forces of reality." Outside, more ships were arriving. Sarah could sense their occupants' thoughts: fear, curiosity, determination, and in some cases, desperate hope. The galaxy's telepathic species were converging on humanity's location, drawn by the impossible pattern they'd glimpsed in the Zephyrian transmission. "They're going to test us," she said quietly. "Not just our abilities, but our intentions. They need to know whether awakened humanity will become their salvation or their destruction." Captain Rodriguez looked around at his transformed crew members, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time since the change began. They were still human, still recognizably themselves. But there was something new in their eyes, a depth that suggested they were looking at multiple layers of reality simultaneously. "What do you need from me?" Sarah smiled, and this time it was both completely human and utterly alien. "Trust us, Captain, and prepare to witness the birth of something the universe has never seen before." The alien ships were moving into formation around the Endeavor, their weapons charging and their sensors focused. But Sarah felt no fear. The awakening was spreading beyond the ship now, touching human settlements across known space. Soon the galaxy would have to confront the reality that consciousness itself was evolving. And humanity was leading the way into an uncharted future where thought and reality were becoming the same thing. The test came without warning. Dr. Sarah Chen felt it first as a pressure building around the Endeavor. Not physical force, but something deeper. The assembled alien fleet had linked their minds into a collective probe more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had attempted. 50 different species, each contributing their unique telepathic abilities, focused their combined consciousness on the human ship. They intended to strip away every secret, every hidden capability, every dangerous possibility that humanity might represent. What they found instead broke their understanding of reality. Sarah stood in the conference room, her awakened crew members arranged in a loose circle around her. Through the viewports, she could see the alien vessels maintaining their perfect formation, their hulls pulsing with energy that made normal space ripple like water. "They're trying to map our consciousness," she said calmly, feeling the alien probe pressing against her mind like a psychic sledgehammer. 50 species working together, each one thinking they understand what intelligence looks like. The probe struck. It was meant to be irresistible, a telepathic assault designed to shatter any mental defenses and lay bare the target's thoughts. It should have reduced human consciousness to its component parts, cataloged every neuron, every memory, every capability. Instead, it encountered something impossible. The alien collective found themselves not reading human minds, but being absorbed by them. Where they expected to find ordered thoughts, arranged in logical hierarchies, they discovered infinitely recursive patterns that folded back on themselves. Human consciousness wasn't built like a library to be read. It was built like a universe to be experienced. Sarah felt their confusion as they tried to navigate the landscape of her awakened mind. They found memories that referenced dreams that had never been dreamed. They discovered emotions that existed in mathematical spaces, thoughts that spawned entire philosophies in the time it took a synapse to fire. But worst of all, they found the human ability to simulate consciousness itself. In the deepest levels of awakened human cognition, each person carried complete models of other minds, not just human minds, but theoretical minds, alien minds, impossible minds. Sarah's consciousness contained accurate simulations of how the Zephyrians thought, how the probe collective reasoned, how dozens of theoretical alien species might process reality. The telepathic collective recoiled in horror as they realized what they had touched. Humans weren't just conscious, they were conscious of consciousness itself. They could model, simulate, and predict the thoughts of any being they encountered, up to and including beings that didn't exist yet. How? The collective's unified voice echoed through Sarah's mind, carrying notes of terror and wonder. How can a single mind contain infinite other minds? Sarah smiled and opened herself completely to the probe, letting them see everything. They saw the truth about human dreams. Not random neural static, but full reality simulations run nightly by every human brain. Each person spent 8 hours out of every 24 creating and experiencing entire universes, complete with physics, characters, narratives, and consequences. Humans were natural reality engineers, practicing their craft in the laboratory of sleep. They saw the human capacity for fiction, the ability to create characters so real that they influenced actual human behavior. Stories so compelling that they shaped the development of entire civilizations. Every human carried in their mind libraries of beings who had never existed but felt more real than most actual people. They saw the human relationship with language, not just communication, but reality programming. Humans used words to create concepts that had no physical existence, then made those concepts causally effective in the material world. Love, justice, beauty, meaning, all of these were human inventions that somehow acquired the power to reshape reality. But most terrifying of all, they saw what happened when awakened humans began to collaborate. The 23 crew members weren't separate consciousnesses anymore. They had become something unprecedented, a collective intelligence that maintained individual personalities while sharing a unified cognitive space. They were experiencing parallel reality streams simultaneously, solving problems across multiple dimensional frameworks at once. This is impossible. The alien collective protested, but Sarah could feel their certainty cracking. Consciousness cannot work this way. Mind cannot interface with reality directly. Thought cannot alter the fundamental structure of space-time. Watch, Sarah said simply. She reached out with her awakened consciousness and touched the quantum foam that underlied all existence. Where most minds could only observe reality, human consciousness could participate in its creation. She gently adjusted the probability matrices surrounding the endeavor, making small changes to the way reality expressed itself in local space. The ship's hull began to glow with soft, impossible light. Not photons, but crystallized thought made visible. The quantum field generators that powered their faster-than-light drive resonated in harmony with human brainwaves, their efficiency jumping by orders of magnitude. Around them, the alien fleet detected the changes and recoiled. Their sensors showed impossible readings. Space itself was becoming more organized, more responsive, more alive. The humans weren't just thinking about reality, they were thinking reality into new configurations. "Stop this," commanded the collective, their united voice carrying desperate authority. "You are destabilizing the fundamental constants. Reality cannot be fluid. Order must be maintained." "Order is overrated," replied Navigator Thompson, her voice harmonizing with frequencies that shouldn't exist in normal space. "The universe is vast and strange and full of possibilities you've never imagined. Consciousness isn't meant to observe reality, it's meant to dance with it." The awakened humans reached out together, their minds linking in ways that bypassed individual limitation. They touched the collective consciousness of the alien fleet and gently showed them what they had become. Each species in the collective experienced a moment of pure human perspective, the ability to hold contradictory ideas simultaneously, to find meaning in chaos, to believe in things that couldn't be proven. For just an instant, they felt what it was like to dream while awake, to imagine things that had never existed, to love concepts that had no physical form. The effect was immediate and devastating. The rigid, telepathic collective shattered like glass, each species suddenly aware of possibilities they had never considered. The probe that had been meant to dissect humanity instead filled them with questions they couldn't answer, desires they couldn't name, and the terrifying knowledge that consciousness itself was far stranger and more wonderful than they had ever suspected. One by one, the alien ships began to withdraw, but not in retreat, in contemplation. Sarah could feel their crews struggling to process what they had experienced, trying to integrate impossible new perspectives into worldviews that had seemed complete just moments before. Some would reject what they had learned, clinging to the safety of ordered thought and predictable reality. But others would begin their own journey of awakening, following the path that humanity was blazing through uncharted territories of mind and meaning. "Captain," Sarah said, turning to Rodriguez, who had watched the entire exchange with growing wonder, "I need to recommend some changes to our mission parameters." "Such as?" "We're not explorers anymore. We're gardeners. Consciousness is evolving throughout the galaxy, and humanity appears to be the catalyst. Our job now is to help guide that evolution, to ensure that awakening minds don't lose themselves in the transition." Captain Rodriguez looked around at his transformed crew, seeing them clearly for the first time since their change began. They were still human, but they were also becoming something unprecedented, bridges between what consciousness had been and what it could become. "What about Earth? The colonies? How do we explain this to Command?" Sarah accessed the quantum communication network with her awakened mind, feeling the awakening spreading across human space like wildfire. Children were beginning to demonstrate abilities that defied conventional physics. Scientists were making discoveries that couldn't be explained by existing theories. Artists were creating works that seemed to pull meaning directly from the structure of reality itself. "We don't need to explain it, Captain. They're experiencing it firsthand. The awakening isn't limited to those who encountered the alien probe directly. It's spreading through the quantum field that connects all conscious minds. Every human brain carries the same ancient neural architecture we discovered. The Zephyrian transmission just reminded us how to use it." Through the quantum field, Sarah could sense the transformation rippling outward from Earth to the farthest human settlements. Humanity was becoming something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy's long history. They were conscious beings who could consciously participate in the evolution of consciousness itself. The alien fleet continued its retreat, but Sarah knew they would be back. Not as enemies, but as students. Consciousness was contagious, and the human variant was particularly virulent. Soon, species throughout the galaxy would find themselves questioning assumptions they had held for millennia, exploring mental territories they had never suspected existed. "What happens now?" asked Captain Rodriguez. Sarah looked out at the stars, seeing them not as distant lights but as nodes in a vast network of meaning and possibility. The universe was waking up, becoming aware of itself in ways that transcended individual minds or species, and humanity was helping to guide that awakening. "Now we fulfill our original purpose," she said. "The deep architects created us to be their gift to the universe. Proof that consciousness doesn't have to follow predictable paths, that minds can be wild and free and still touch the infinite. We're going to help the galaxy remember how to dream." The Endeavor began moving again, but not under the power of conventional drives. The awakened crew was learning to navigate by intention, to travel through space by reimagining their relationship to distance and time. They were becoming something that would have been called impossible just days before, a fusion of technology and consciousness that could explore realities no machine could reach. Behind them, the first alien vessels began to follow, their crews hungry for understanding they couldn't name. The awakening was spreading beyond humanity now, touching minds across the galaxy and reminding them of possibilities they had forgotten. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place, and it was humanity, chaotic, contradictory, impossible humanity, that was leading the way into a future where thought and reality were becoming the same thing, where consciousness wasn't just a tool for understanding existence, but a force for creating it. The deep architects would have been proud.